After the Indian Air Force and Indian Army's Operation Sindoor strikes inside Pakistan, now comes a massive diplomatic victory for India versus Pakistan. The SCO Summit in China has vindicated India's Operation Sindoor military strikes against terror headquarters deep inside Pakistan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's power play at the SCO Summit gained global spotlight, especially as Modi was seen exchanging warm greetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The meeting was also attended by Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who was brutally ignored by Indian Prime Minister Modi. Photographs and videos from Tianjin showed visible camaraderie among the three leaders, but it was clear that Pakistan Prime Minister Sharif was left on the sidelines, seething and angry. Shehbaz Sharif was seen looking on with a grim expression as Prime Minister Modi walked away with Vladimir Putin, with the leaders exchanging views among themselves. Prime Minister Modi was also seen standing several paces apart from Sharif in the first family photo from the summit. Sharif was not just put on the sidelines by Indian Prime Minister Modi, but he was also silent as the SCO member countries condemned the Pahalgam terror attack in Kashmir. In fact, any kind of state-sponsored terror. As a matter of fact, the summit's highlight was the adoption of the Tianjin Declaration, where for the first time, all SCO member states, including Pakistan and China, unanimously condemned the Pahalgam terror attack, in which 26 innocent Indian civilians were killed in Jammu and Kashmir earlier this year by a Pakistan-backed terror group. The declaration states, the member states strongly condemn the terror attack in Pahalgam on the 22nd of April. Now, India has zero tolerance policy against terror, and this was on full display in the months leading up to the SCO Summit. The developments at this summit is a significant turning point for India, as the Pahalgam attack had failed to find mention in the draft declaration of the defense ministers level meeting of the SCO held in Qingdao earlier this year in June. India had boycotted the defense minister's statement because that statement had mentioned the hijacking of the Jafar Express in Balochistan, but it did not mention the Pahalgam attack by Pakistan-backed terror group in Kashmir. Now, that meeting in Qingdao was attended by Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, who refused to endorse any statement that sidestepped or sidelined the crime in Kashmir, reinforcing India's message. There will be no compromise and no room for double standards where it comes to terror and state-sponsored terror. Now, Prime Minister Modi's address at the Tianjin summit at the SCO echoed India's stance. With Shehbaz Sharif in audience, Modi roared, quote, "Recently, we witnessed the most heinous face of terror in Pahalgam. I express my deepest gratitude to all the friendly nations that stood by us during this moment of grief. This attack was not only an assault on the conscience of India, but also an open challenge to every nation and every individual who believes in humanity. In such circumstances, it is natural to ask, can the open support for terror by certain countries ever be acceptable to us?" Unquote. The Pahalgam attackers had identified Hindu tourists and eliminated them based on their religion in front of their families. India says any attack will now be treated as an act of war. Modi added, "This attack was not only an attack on India's soul, but an open challenge to all the countries that believe in humanity. In such a situation, the question arises whether a few countries supporting terror openly should be accepted by us. We should speak in a united front that no double standards are accepted in terror." During his address, Prime Minister Modi did not name Pakistan, but drew attention to some nations supporting terror openly. He asserted, "In the fight against terror, India stands firm on unity, and the SCO has an important role." Even before Prime Minister Modi had departed for China, in fact, for this summit, India's foreign ministry had already mentioned that it expected a strong condemnation of the Pahalgam attack from all member countries. The member nations expressed their deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the victims and the injured. They further emphasized that the perpetrators, organizers, and sponsors of such attacks must be brought to justice. The declaration stated, The member states strongly condemn terror in all its forms and manifestations, stress that double standards in the fight against terror are unacceptable, and call on the international community to combat terror, including the cross-border movement of terror groups, unquote. The document not only conveys condolences to victims' families but condemns all forms of terror. It stresses that the fight against terror must not be subject to double standards, and the international community was called upon to combat cross-border terror. The Tianjin Declaration was signed and adopted by all members, including India, Pakistan, China, and Russia. The declaration reaffirmed the bloc's firm commitment to fight against terror, separatism, and extremism, and stressed the inadmissibility of attempts to use terror, separatism, and extremist groups for mercenary purposes. Along with condemning the Pahalgam massacre, the Tianjin Declaration also condemned the Jafar Express and Khuzdar terror attacks in Balochistan. After the Pahalgam terror attack, the world stood by India, with many notable global leaders voicing their concerns against terror. US President Donald Trump stated on Truth Social, "The United States stands strong with India against terror. Prime Minister Modi and the people of India have our full support and deepest sympathies." Here's what French President Emmanuel Macron said on X right after the attack. "A heinous terror attack has struck India, claiming the lives of dozens of men and women from all walks of life. We share the profound sorrow of the victims' families, to whom I extend my heartfelt condolences." United Arab Emirates stated, "UAE expresses its strong condemnation of these criminal acts and its permanent rejection of all forms of violence and terror aimed at undermining security and stability in contravention of international law." Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar expressed that he was deeply saddened by the heinous terror attack on tourists in Pahalgam and that Israel stands united with India in the fight against terror. Leaders of the BRICS nations also rallied behind India, condemning the attack and terror activities in the strongest terms. The BRICS declaration stated, "We condemn in the strongest terms the terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir on the 22nd of April, during which 26 people were killed and many more injured. We reaffirm our commitment to combating terror in all its forms and manifestations, including the cross-border movement of terror groups, terror financing, and safe havens." The Tianjin Declaration's adoption is seen as a recognition of India's persistent advocacy and a warning against the use of terror for strategic gain. Modi's cold shoulder to Pakistan Prime Minister contrasted with engaged discussions with Xi Jinping and President Putin highlight shifting alliances and India's growing influence. This meeting also marks a shift from the previous SCO Defense Ministers meeting held in China just a few months ago. But not just Pahalgam or Pulwama, the attackers and masterminds behind the 9/11 in New York, 2008 Mumbai attacks, and even London train bombings have all been linked with the global terror factory, which is Pakistan. The Tianjin Declaration is a vindication of India's military and diplomatic counter-offensive against Pakistan, so much so that it was adopted in China, which Pakistan calls its all-weather ally. Russia, China, and Iran are among the 10 permanent members who have signed the document at the recent summit. But what do you believe? Despite Operation Sindoor, will Pakistan ever give up its policy of religious extremism and state-backed terror? Leave a comment with your opinion, hit the like button, and subscribe to Inconnect News.